seriously, you have to take enslaved people seriously. It means you have to know who they are, you have to know their names, you have to know what they're doing, you have to know what Jefferson is having them do. And if you're not paying attention to that, there's no way to make him whole or to present him to the extent that anybody can be made whole by a biography. But there's no way to do that without incorporating those people into his life, everybody. Enslaved workers, the few white workers who were there as well. I mean, you just don't have a sense of Jefferson with other people beyond Madison or Hamilton or, famous people he has known, kind of thing. Those famous people to whom he's written. He had friends in the community. He had people, most people don't know who those folks are. And so I think it's a tremendous opportunity because people say, well, what are you going to do another biography of Jefferson? But he's never really been done because the 200 people that he lived among for many years were never a part of that. And it's just, and they were visceral. They were very much a part of his life.
And he was quite a manager of slaves,
Well, he was a manager in the sense that, he was a manager of people who managed slaves. He was not, I'm writing a chapter now. Peter Onuf and I are doing a book about Jefferson that's sort of a character study of Jefferson, a thematic study of Jefferson. One of the interesting things about him is that he really was not that much interested in farming. I mean, you think of Jefferson, he was born on a plantation. He inherited slaves, but Jefferson was a builder. Madison Hemmings, his son, was saying that he did not care much for agriculture, unlike Washington. It was his mechanics, and what he means, workers. I mean, Monticello was a plantation where he spent most of the time, most of the enslaved people there that he was involved with were people who were building the house. Well, building the house doesn't make any money. It spends money. But so that's the vast bulk of these people who are working on physical, projects that we like to have. So you have this person who has an image that you have to kind of recast in a way. And also, how do you explain somebody who has some ideas that are, anathema to us today? How do you take him seriously? When you're writing, the difference between telling the reader this is what this guy thinks he's doing and saying it in a way that doesn't make it seem like an endorsement of what they're saying. Because Douglas is, you have a person who's, unless the people are crazy, sort of unassailably a heroic figure, right? I mean, who doesn't like Frederick Douglass? Right? I mean, there are things about Frederick Douglass that people don't.
I have my mornings.
You have your mornings. There are things about Douglass. You know what I mean? There are things about Douglass. Every person is flawed. But Jefferson is a much more controversial figure, and has always been a much more controversial figure from the very beginning. There were people who hated him, and there are biographers who wrote about him who really didn't like him. So you're dealing with a person who has this complicated, people in the country have a complicated relationship to, much more so than I think, than Douglas. And so how do I write and say, how do I take him at his word, take him seriously without the reader getting the wrong idea about things? Because I do think it's worth it to take people seriously, the things that are important to them, to take them seriously, and you're trying to explicate that for the reader, but you're not saying, yeah, this is great.
I find you're trying to see your way into Jefferson's relationships with the 200 people he owned, with the people who managed his plantation, his daily life at Monticello. I'm trying to do this. I mean, Douglas doesn't manage any plantations, but he has a family, a complicated family. And he has...
Who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't? But of course, a historian's answer can't be just that it's complicated. We have to have explanation. What does a father say to his two sons who are 19 and 21, when he recruits them into the army? Douglas never said a word, except that my sons joined the 54th Massachusetts. Yeah? Did you actually, what did you actually say to them when you convinced them to join? He's never going to tell us that. I have to kind of try to see my way into that. And when Lewis, his oldest son, comes back the Fort Wagner campaign badly with gangrene, and is here in New York City, possibly, at death's edge. He survived. Douglas came and spent 3 weeks at the bedside of that son. About all he said, and one that we have is a letter. I spent 3 weeks at his bedside. Yeah. So,
yeah, well, I mean,
you're constantly trying to find some way to think your way into that is still behind some kind of evidence.
well, one of the things that it makes it somewhat easier with Jefferson, because Jefferson has a family that also writes. And one of the things that I found in the Hemmings of Monticello, doing the Hemmings of Monticello, is that it's useful to get at him as a subject by reading what other people say. There's an episode where he's at Poplar Forest, and Burl Colbert, who is his sort of personal valet, Sally Hemings' nephew, gets really, really sick and is almost at death's door. And Ellen, his granddaughter, is writing back to her mother back at Monticello saying, I've never seen grandfather this, upset. He's waiting. He usually hates doctors. He's waiting for the doctor to show up. I don't know what's going to happen if we wake up and Burl is dead. I don't know what he's going to be. She's going on and on and on about how he's carrying on. And he writes a letter to Martha and says, Burl has been sick. We've come close to losing him, but he's fine. And so, reading that, if you read that, you would say, oh, well, that's, he wasn't too worried. But you have this series of letters from his granddaughters. You see him through their eyes, what he's doing, and he's never going to. So, I don't know about Douglas's family or whatever. I mean, but you do have that problem. It's an 18th century and a 19th century. People were not as emotive as we are today. I mean, the whole thing was controlled, and certainly for males, for men.
And there's no such thing as a tell-all all the way.
No. You're supposed to be. I mean, somebody wrote to Jefferson and asked him, who's going to be doing a biography, he said, what are the names of your grandchildren? He said, what do you want to know the name of my grandchildren for? That has nothing. This is going to bore people. What does that have to do with my life as a public person? That's the only thing that matters. The things the public acts, the private world was supposed to be private, and certainly men were supposed to be in control of their.
Any evidence that Jefferson destroyed any letters or material?
Oh, sure. He destroyed his letters with his wife. The letters between him and his wife he destroyed, and even as late as 1819, he was writing to people to ask them, do you have any letters from Patsy? Send them to me, so he was going to destroy them.
Douglas probably destroyed a lot of letters, although there was a fire